Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, weight loss drugs for troops, we dig into a report on service members' use of the popular medicines. Plus, a heavy lift drone that uses magnets to pick up payloads and can change its radar signature to look like a C-130. We get a first look. And an underappreciated group of women service members is recognized with an exhibition at the National Museum of the Marine Corps. Join us for a sneak peek. Plus, how does a tank cross a river? With the help of specialized boats and equipment fielded by the Army, we see how one piece of the puzzle works. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. Here's a question you haven't thought about yet today. Should military members be using more weight loss medication to slim down and stay fighting force ready? Various branches for years have battled too fat to fight assessments that say too many troops are not physically fit enough to perform combat duties, and responded with various PT requirements and other regulations. But what if you could just take a pill? With Ozempic and other drugs exploding in popularity, a new study suggests weight loss treatments have been underutilized among military members. Should that trend change? And what would be the impact? Reporter Jonathan Lehrfeld is here with more.
The United States military wants its troops in tip-top shape. At a moment's notice, warfighters must be ready to protect American people, assets, and interests at home and abroad. And to do that, members of the armed forces are required to meet specific standards set by their respective services. But for many reasons, service members may struggle to achieve expectations about their weight. In response, the military has set up numerous pathways for its troops to shed the extra pounds, from fitness training to nutrition education. But not everyone can easily lower the intimidating number on the scale, even with regular dieting and exercise. The increasing prevalence of weight disease in the US, both in and out of the military community, has led to the employment of alternative solutions to manage the epidemic. That includes one that often garners a mixture of positive and dismissive reactions: anti-obesity medications. TRICARE, the military's healthcare program, began approving coverage of weight loss medications in May 2018, following authorization from the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act. A spokesperson for the Defense Health Agency told Military Times these are doctor-prescribed medications and are not issued directly to troops. Service members see a TRICARE authorized provider who prescribes the medication based on medical necessity. While usage of anti-obesity medications has grown in the military since their authorization, overall it remains low. Now, researchers say that compared to the civilian world, the military health system is significantly underutilizing the drugs. They say they're a tool that could aid in patients' health, improve military readiness, and reduce fiscal costs associated with being overweight or obese. According to a study published in August, funded by the Pentagon's Defense Health Agency, less than 1% of active duty personnel use anti-obesity medication. But the authors of that report noted they could reasonably extrapolate that at least 22% of the active duty population would qualify for the use of medications because they meet BMI criteria for having obesity. So why is the military not utilizing the medications to a higher degree? Here's an important point. The services are not handing out weight loss medications willy-nilly. There's a systematic, comprehensive procedure medical providers follow that involves getting a prior authorization. TRICARE utilizes a protocol that requires one of the anti-obesity medications, phentermine, be used before others can be prescribed for patients. The course of treatment depends on the drug prescribed and the physician's instructions for its use. Another reason the military may not be utilizing the medications more: supply. While some companies have announced in recent months they are lowering the cost of weight loss drugs for patients, offering them as single-dose vials, as of August, the FDA lists limited availability for other anti-obesity medications as a result of increased demand. A strong desire among Americans to use the meds tracks, given the high prevalence of being overweight or obese across the country. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2022, all U.S. states and territories had an obesity prevalence of more than 1 in 5 adults, with the Midwest and South having the highest prevalence of obesity. All of that has an impact on recruitment, an issue the military has been battling with in recent years. According to the 2020 Qualified Military Available Study shared with Military Times by a DoD spokesperson, when considering young potential recruits ineligible to join for one reason alone, the most prevalent disqualification was for being overweight, at 11%. At the end of September, a Senate panel is scheduled to discuss the high cost of weight loss drugs. Meanwhile, the House version of the annual defense policy bill that passed out of the chamber in the summer includes a provision that would require the Secretary of Defense to develop a strategy to align the obesity-related programs of the Department of Defense with the classification of obesity as a medically accepted disease. But the legislation still has a number of hoops to make it through, including the Senate and getting the president's signature before it becomes law. From Military Times, I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld.
One of the unsung duties of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan was the work done by women as part of the female engagement teams in Afghanistan and the Lionesses in Iraq. At a time when female combat roles were restricted, these troops nevertheless were still out on patrols, working with local women either in searches for threats or training them to perform searches of their own. As part of a recent expansion of the National Museum of the Marine Corps, the women of these units were memorialized in a special exhibit. We got a preview of the new section and spoke with 2 veterans of these units. Check it out.
Nowadays, a lot of people are very familiar. Women are in all different roles, open to all combat roles. Any job in the military a woman can do with no issue. But years ago, that wasn't the case. Could you tell me a little bit about how these female engagement teams operated? Kind of what was the concept?
So the female engagement team was an evolution of the Lioness program in Iraq. That program was generally a stationary undertaking at Iraq entry checkpoints and vehicle checkpoints. It proved to be so valuable, however, that they evolved the program again into the female engagement team, which is where we came in. They bumped it up a little bit to make us mobile, whereby we embedded in the local communities and with line companies. A typical engagement would include tactical questioning, but our mission was to directly engage a community who had not yet been engaged, which was the women and the children, not only to build rapport, but also to conduct tactical questioning in effort to mitigate future insurgencies in Afghanistan.
And now both of you had kind of different jobs, different backgrounds before you experienced this deployment. What kind of preparation, training, what did you learn to do this kind of a job that wasn't part of your kind of day job?
I was technically air wing, so we weren't too focused on doing any sort of patrolling or physicalities in those general senses. So once we got onto the female engagement team, our training was every day. We were in our gear, full combat load every day. It was savvy plates constantly. Anytime we were going somewhere, we're running, we're making sure we're first class everything, and then our majority focus training was definitely be the language training, culture training, as well as tactical training and room clearing, and then patrol and dispersion. It's a very crash course. Most infantry guys, of course, they get that workup that's about a year long. We had 3 months to just kind of come from every background and which way and just get tossed into it. So we had a lot of extensive training, however, it was very short.
There's a lot of artifacts here that could really bring out personal memories. I'm curious if you each might share a little bit of what you've noticed here that kind of struck a chord with you.
Absolutely. So in the Afghanistan section, there is a moment where you come around a corner and you see a shura. A shura is an engagement where you would have the local village elders come through and meet with either your CO or whoever was in charge of your area. And this is a very important meeting because your CO is not going out on a patrol with you every day. And the village elders necessarily aren't just speaking to any Marines out on patrol. And this is where you're gathering atmospherics and getting an understanding and maybe even an engagement agreement for future female engagement team processes, or the fact that you're just kind of getting that in with counterinsurgency and understanding coin operations to say you're there to win the hearts and minds for the people. So seeing that really took me back and kind of gave me that moment of pause, made me feel like I was back there in a reminiscent moment, but in the sense of being so proud of the fact that every detail is so paid attention to here, from the sweat on the back of the Marines in their frog suits to the teacups that are in the Shura for the Marines and the elders to drink out of. It's something myself and my teammate participated in, and certainly my CO, so seeing that exactly was truly a moment.
When we return, heavy lift drones are on every service's wish list. Check out one that looks like a stealth bomber and can fly hundreds of pounds to your location in the field. Welcome back. The Air Force and other services are in the hunt for heavy lift drones that can resupply troops in forward and GPS-denied locations when they need vital items quickly. How do you get everything from radios, to bullets, to wounded troops, to and from battlefield locations without putting pilots and air crews at risk? One company working on a solution is Amentum. We stopped by their booth at the recent Air, Space, and Cyber conference to get a look at one of their options, called the Mule. It looks like a stealth fighter and comes with some interesting spoofing technology meant to confuse enemy detection. Have a look.
Today, we're here with the Wave Aerospace Mule platform, which is designed for our contested logistics solution. I think being able to get in and out of any location while bringing whatever payload we need to bring there. This one in particular, 200-pound carrying capacity. We have a larger one that gives us 400-pound carrying capacity. We can medevac people out. We can bring ammo in. We can bring fuel in. We can bring just plain logistics in a cargo box. It's all magnetically driven. The system has a magnet on both ends of it, all electronically driven. We simply turn a switch, turns the magnet on and off, similar to like a railway system, and therefore we can pick anything up. So 1,500 pounds of magnet, and those magnets range from 4 to 8, depending on the size of the payload. This one in particular, we're not putting a pure distance on it. We're simply saying 200 pounds for 2 hours. So, kind of use your imagination there. But the bigger one is really designed to go 400 miles at 400 pounds. So about a 500-pound total capacity. It's about a 100-pound vehicle. So it's huge. It's huge. The distance is huge. One, medical, right? Being able to bring in medical supplies in and out. There's also, like the Navy, for instance, a ship-to-ship, ship-to-shore transport of logistics. We can actually even use these as relay points. So if we wanted to go beyond visual line of sight, we can create that. The reason why we chose this platform was because of its ability to land in a contested environment, regardless of the weather, regardless of the output, and it doesn't need anything to land on. So I don't need a runway. All I need is an open patch of land, and I can put that thing down with whatever it is. So being able to come in on the radar and drop that stuff off is huge. Think about if you bring in a very small aircraft with a small signature, and all of a sudden it's the size of a C-130, and you're a mile away from let's just say the enemy for the sake of argument. That's going to be, that's a big deal, right? Being able to get that close with something that large, it becomes a distraction. It becomes a point of focus where we're trying to do something else, elsewhere per se. This is arguably one of the smartest vehicles out there, just because it checks off so many boxes. It uses fuel and electricity, so it's hybrid. So imagine coming in with all the noise. I can simply turn that off, come in with electricity, super silent, pick up what I need, and get out of there. Now, on top of that, if I fly into a contested environment and I can't get out, I can turn that into a 20 kilowatt power source at the edge. So I can literally, it's literally like a generator. Plug it in and ready to go. Now, the material, we have a magnetic coating on that, so if you get a directed energy shot, we're going to be able to bounce that back with no issues. Super lightweight product. The whole thing is built out of this material, super strong. I'm not breaking it, you're not breaking it. So pretty cool cutting edge technology and capability. It's fully autonomous, right? So think about a GPS denied environment. I can actually program this to go right through the GPS denied environment based off of some waypoints and some other secret sauce, deliver its payload, turn around and come right back. The little sister of this is fully operational, fully flying, all that good stuff. This one in particular, end of this year, we're out and about, we're moving. Next calendar year, we're moving into full scale.
In headlines from around the military, the Pentagon has released footage of a Russian jet flying dangerously close to the nose of a US F-16 in the skies near Alaska. The incident occurred when U.S. warplanes intercepted a Russian bomber and were escorting it when the Russian Su-35 suddenly overtook and crossed in front of the Air Force jet. U.S. planes under the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, somewhat frequently come into contact with Russian aircraft, and Russian planes have a history of turning those interactions into close contacts. NORAD called the recent close call, quote, "not what you'd see in a professional Air Force." On the defense side of the house, the Air Force last week awarded Lockheed Martin a $3.2 billion multi-year contract for air-to-ground and anti-ship missiles as part of a Pentagon effort to maximize weapons production through multi-year procurements. The sole source contract is for AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missiles and AGM-158B joint air-to-surface standoff missiles and will include foreign military sales to Japan, the Netherlands, Finland, and Poland. The Pentagon in 2023 proposed using multi-year procurement authorities, which are usually used for buying ships or aircraft, to buy munitions, which it hoped would allow industry to expand its production capacity. Defense officials said the move was intended to deter China and strengthen the U.S. defense industrial base, which along with weapons stockpile has been strained by arms shipments to Ukraine. The aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln will stay in the Middle East as the U.S. bolsters its forces in the region, the Pentagon said recently. The announcement came amid heightened tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, following strikes in Lebanon and the death of the militant group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. U.S. forces have surged to the region as concerns continue about an all-out war between Iran and Israel. The Lincoln arrived in the Middle East in August to replace the aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt after Lincoln was operating in the Indo-Pacific region. The Lincoln is equipped with F-35C and F-A-18 Super Hornet fighter jets. When we come back, headed out on deployment? Our personal finance expert is back with tips on how to get your finances in order before you ship out. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Are you headed out on deployment there, sailor? There's a lot to think about. Gotta get the house ready, make sure you got the right gear. On this episode of Money Minute, Jeanette Mack from Navy Federal Credit Union walks you through how to get one more thing prepared before you go: your finances.
When you're preparing for deployment, there's so much to do, not the least of which should be creating a plan and a budget for how you'll manage your finances while you're away. Your pay may change when you're deployed, which could increase your monthly income, so you should be including your new pay allowances and subtracting your regular monthly bills and payments to calculate how much money you or your family will have to work with. Since your free time and travel will be limited, deployment could be an opportune time to start building that savings. Take advantage of it if you can. Being proactive isn't just smart, it could save you money and add security for your finances. Before you go, establish your eligibility for the various benefits and protections you have access to. Check out the federal tax advantages and special active duty protections that can minimize your financial risk while you're overseas. Set up credit alerts and adjust your life insurance policy as necessary. And be sure you're carrying a good credit card that waives foreign transaction fees. To get more info on ways to keep your finances on track, don't be afraid to get help. Talk to your trusted bank or credit union. A good one will be there for you before, during, and after your deployment.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, drop the optic and set those iron sights on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to be the most informed coastie in the helicopter hangar, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you collect open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And just like most junior troops, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. When we come back, you want to get your Humvee across that river? We'll show you a custom piece of Army tech that makes building bridges in the field possible. Stay tuned. When the Army wants to cross a water obstacle, they need something quick and reliable, which is where specialized bridging equipment comes in. Designed to allow troops, vehicles, and even tanks to cross a wet gap in short order with minimal equipment, this gear is a vital part of U.S. Land Force's capability. At a recent trip to the Selfridge Air National Guard Base, we got a look at one of the key elements of the bridging equipment, the boats that steer the floating roadways into place. Have a look at how this custom piece of Army tech does its job.
My name is Maurice Payton. I'm the product support manager for PM Bridging, and today we're doing a demonstration on the bridge erection boat. This boat gives us the capability, in conjunction with the improved ribbon bridge, to close multiple gaps or do multiple rafting missions. And we have the ability to do it in conjunction with the IRB. So what essentially happens is the bridge erection boats are launched first, and then the units will individually launch the improved ribbon bridge modules. And then the construction team will link the modules together to build whatever size that they need to accommodate the existing gap. They can essentially close a gap, depending on the size of the gap, close the gap within less than an hour. And obviously, rafting speeds, we can raft up to a MLC of 140. That's equivalent to about 2 M1 tanks on a 7-bay raft. So the M30 bridge erection boat, we have a requirement to operate in shallow water. In order to do that, we have to perform with water jets. Instead of the normal prop, where a prop goes down into the water, this has an intake grill, and it sucks water up the intake grill and then out the outtake of the jet, which provides us the propulsion. We only need 4 feet of water to launch this boat, but we can operate in as little as 2 feet of water. So below you'll see the water jet housing for the Tractor Jet 381. This is where we get our propulsion. The outside, of course, you're only seeing the housing. Inside you'll have a stator and an impeller, and then actually your buckets, which all work in tandem together to give us propulsion to go either forward or astern. So each bridge erection boat has twin Cummins QSB 6.7 engines that are detuned to 245 horsepower. Actually, ease of maintainability, big difference from the legacy system. And then again, we have the ability, we have redundancies again. If this engine goes down, we can still get home and operate the propulsion from the other engine. When speaking of the redundancies, the main one that we focus on is our steering redundancies, steering and propulsion. So again, a redundancy, another way to get us home, basically a limp home mode. So in our steering situation, if we lose our steering, we have another way in our backup control panel to ensure that we can either complete the mission or get back to home station. So this is called a capstan. It's essentially a winch. And what we do is we tie up to the improved ribbon bridge with this. So essentially the line comes out and it goes out into a V and ties off to our ramp. Once it's tied off, we have a crank here. You crank this down and it puts tension on the line to button us up to the improved ribbon bridge. This water is not really choppy, but when we recover the boat on the legacy boat, it had a platform called the improved boat cradle, and they actually had to back into the cradle when the water is pushing them over to the side. With this boat's a little bit different. I know we're not doing a recovery today, but we just pull straight up to the boat. It's like you're pulling up to your trailer. The boat hooks up to this lifting eye on front and snatches us right out of the water. Right? So it makes it a lot easier for the younger soldiers that don't have a lot of boating experience. So FUE, first unit equipped for the bridge erection boat, was in 2018, April of 2018. We have a requirement to produce and field 491, and we've currently fielded 393. We have 4 remaining fieldings left, and then we'll be completely filled and we'll achieve full operational capability.
Well, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.